All right. So let's get started, right? Well, let me introduce myself. I am Nataly Rocha. I'm a software developer at Stack Builders. I am from Quito, Ecuador. I'm really passionate about web development, and I also love to play the guitar and enjoy producing music a lot. So let's continue and check the agenda that we have for this talk. First, we're going to check a little bit about what is serverless. Then we are going to check what is Amplify, which is the tool that we are going to be using to build a serverless backend. Also, Cognito and OpenID, which are the tools for the authentication. Finally, Dynamo and Lambda functions that are the ones that help us to store and build the backend logic. Finally, how to connect with the front end for what we are building, and the VST plugin that we are going to be connected to the serverless functions. Okay, and some other possibilities that we might have with the AWS SDK and basically serverless. Cool. So first, to know what serverless is, let's check what's the evolution of the infrastructure, right? First, we used to have like physical web servers that we actually have to buy a super big server, or just a computer that we got a public API connected to the network, and we basically have something to serve with. For example, WAMP, LAMP, MAMP, and others, right? But here we always had to check all the versions, what security patches that we have installed, if the infrastructure is correct, and all that kind of stuff, right? So then we have the possibility to rent a server, so someone else handled the infrastructure for us, but we also still have to check everything that has to be with the infrastructure. And for example, it was hard to scale and stuff like that. Then we came to the virtual machine servers. So these ones become popular because we start having an increase of the web frameworks. Like, for example, Laravel was introduced, Django, ROR, ASP, and others, right? So we started having multiple ways to get our applications running, and we needed also ways to scale, have them in different platforms. So virtual machines were a solution. Finally, then we have like infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, which help us a little bit handling the infrastructure for us. Or, for example, if we hire like a software that is that is in the cloud, we basically don't have to worry that much about the versions that it is using, the security and anything like that, right? So serverless came in because we always had the same questions. Why do we have to spend so much time maintaining the servers? Why is it so hard to scale up? Or why do we have to think so much in infrastructure instead of going to concentrate in the business logic? That is what serverless started asking, basically. So this proposal gives us a lot of advantages, and I know that servers are still used, but the backend services are provided without the hassle of worrying about the underlying infrastructure, right? So we start focusing straight in the logic. So this gives us this sort of advantages. You can start coding almost immediately. If things go well with our applications, we basically can scale up really easy our services. We can also separate our code in different functions instead of making like, for example, like a monorepo or something really big to handle everything to get it to work into one server. We can separate and make microservices in different functions. We can also program triggers for certain events, which I think is one of the best advantages that serverless give us. We are going to be checking this a little bit later. Also, the providers usually take care of the server, the updates, the scaling, the deploying is also handled almost immediately. And the costs are also lower because we are charged by invocation, which is they charge us as we use the service. Okay, so this is more or less the concept of serverless, right? So what are we going to be building in the demo? It is going to be first a serverless backend that is going to provide features like authentication, storage, sharing, and basically everything that we need in order to build a VST plugin setting library. So what we want is that a user that is going to use our plugin has the possibility to save those settings, the favorite settings, into the cloud. So they go to the cloud, they can be shared, they can be used in one studio, then it goes to another computer or studio, and that user can download those settings to use them anywhere he wants, okay? And we can also check a little bit of what would be the advantage of using the serverless, because we can share this in the VST plugin, we can share this in the web, we can share this in our Android application, and we're going to check more or less how we can do that. Okay, so as I told you before, Amplify is the tool that we are going to be using. It's designed specifically for frontend, okay? Because as serverless basically handles everything in the backend, you can concentrate in the front end and build the infrastructure a bit like super fast, I would say, because it also removes the burden of having to configure all the hosting, the servers, and even authentication, which is, I think, one of the best features that Amplify has with Cognito. And it's perfect to get started with serverless because, you know, there are some other ways that we can build serverless backends, like, for example, the serverless framework, CDK, and others. But Amplify is just a good way to get started. Okay, so let's jump, I think, to the demo, right? We are going to be building the serverless backend, and for that, we basically have to go ahead and install Amplify, right? I'm going to be building like a really small backend here and showing you the possibilities that this have as we go through. Okay, so to install Amplify, you can always go to the AWS documentation and check it out because it's really complete and has a lot of documents on how to start, how to use it, different scenarios and stuff like that. But to install it, you just need to call the command, and that should be it. I'm not going to do it right now because it's already done, and obviously it will take like a lot of time. But what I am going to do is the first step that we need to do in order to start using Amplify, which is Amplify configure, right? So let's check what happens here. If I enter Amplify configure, it's going to redirect me to my AWS account, right? So we obviously have to have an AWS account at the console, and here is going to log you in. And after that, you basically need to press enter and choose the region that you are working at. So if you go here, you should be able to get the region, which right now is US West 2. And here I need to add an Amplify username for the credentials that I'm going to be using locally. So right now, I guess I can say like, for example, live ADC user. Okay, this is going to take me to my IAM console here in the AWS. Is going to prefill the user that we added. is going to select by default the programmatic access, which is the one that we are going to be using for the CLI. You can also create IAM credentials for users to use the console, but right now we just need to use the CLI, so that should be fine. Same here, we need administrator access for Amplify. You can reduce the amount of permissions that you want to give these credentials, but the administrator access for Amplify is just fine at the moment. Okay, then it asks to add tags, but if you want to recognize the user, and finally we should create it. Okay, so once it's created, we just go here and press enter, and we should be able to copy the credentials that were generated here. This is my secret, so I will delete this as soon as we finish the presentation. Here we can add a profile name because you can have different profiles in your local machine for different accounts. Okay, so here I'm going to add, like, for example, live ADC local. Okay, yeah, that was it. Now we can actually use the CLI and is going to have the possibilities to connect to all the services that we have in AWS through the CLI. Awesome. The next step that we have to do is to initialize a project, right? Because Amplify, if we go here and check, this is the Amplify console. So you can see that I have many applications running. So Amplify works as any other service by project. So what we have to do to start our serverless backend is to, let me clear the console, is to amplify init. Okay, if we do this, it is basically going to start asking us about what we want to build, right? Or what is going to be the name of the project. So for example, right, I'm going to write ADC live session or live talk. Okay, by default, it suggests you some configurations in order to what you have. For example, my default editor should be Visual Studio. The application type is going to be JavaScript. Things like how we are going to be building the application, the directories. You can always change this later. So or edit it now. I'm going to leave it like that for the moment and start initializing the configuration. Here is going to ask if we want to use the AWS profile that we created or the access keys. Right now, I'm going to use my live ADC local that we created. And this should be able to connect to the AWS console in order to initialize the project. Okay. So in a few seconds, I believe that it's probably going to start showing up here. But what it's basically doing is creating like the local credentials that we need in order to connect and start adding the services. So as you can see, basically creates a bunch of stuff. And here we have the ADC live talk that we created right now. Okay. Here is going to ask me if I want to help improve the Amplify CLI. And that was it. So yeah, now we have a new fresh project of Amplify, which is this one. And here we can start adding several things. As you can see here, it says, check what's the Amplify status. Amplify add is the one that is going to help us add whatever service that we want. We can use push in order to public or deploy what we have locally, every service that we configure locally. Okay, so after this, I would like to show you a little bit about the authentication, which is one of the most important parts of using or connected something to a service, right? So we are going to be using Cognito. Cognito, let me show you here, is a tool that helps us to basically have authentication set up in a really quick way and has a lot of configurations that we can use. We can use it directly in the front end because we even have like plugins, connected plugins that you don't even have to program lines of code to say this is the text input for the username, for the mail, no, you just set up the plugin and you're good to go with authentication and super secure because it uses, as you can see here, it uses the API gateway that I'm going to show later how it works. And yeah, so let's configure it, right? Go to Amplify, auth. And this is going to start asking several questions that we can answer in order to configure the way that we want the users to authenticate. If you use the default configuration, it's going to take you to have authentication set up like in a minute. But I would like to set up a manual configuration to show you more or less what we can actually do, right? So it gives us a couple of options. The one is used for IAM controls, like using for maybe like for CLI purposes again, but this one is the one we want because we need the users to be connected to a cloud API. Okay, so let's choose this one and let's provide a name for the authentication. So yeah, let's try ADC live talk. That should be fine. Provide a name for your user pool. Okay, the user pool is where we are going to have all of our users' data, how they authenticate, what is going to be the password policy, if we want multi-factor authentication, how do we want the UI for the authentication to look like? So the user pool is where we group all of the things that we need to configure about our authentication. So yeah, let's ADC live talk pool. Cool. Here is going to set up how do we want the users to sign in. It could be just by email, phone number, or username. I'm going to choose username. At the moment, you can choose whatever you want. Same here. Do you want to add user pool groups? This is really useful because here you can set up like different roles. Like I want administrators, I want the editor, or I want like clients, stuff like that, right? So you can set up roles that can group the users, and you can add different functionalities to each group. Okay, I'm going to say no for the moment. The same one here is an awesome feature that it has, because it is always important to have a main administrator that can actually delete the users, edit the users, create users, and this is what this is for. You can create admin queries immediately. You don't have to program the logic in order to create the user or delete them or whatever. You have the queries ready here. Okay, I'm going to say no at the moment because we just want the possibility to share, authenticate the user and share the settings of the user. So that's enough. Here we can also set up multi-factor authentication, which is really useful because Cognito handles it by default. You don't have to set up anything additional. So yeah, you can set it up, or I will leave it off for the moment. The same here is the possibility to let the user to remember or use their registration forgot password with SMS or email, right? I'm going to choose email at the moment, and it lets you choose what is going to be the text that the user is going to receive when you send the email. Okay, so for example, here I can say just your verification code is something, or that is going to be the subject, the text of the email. Do you want to override the default password for the policy that it has by default, which is, I think, 8 characters and special characters, uppercase, lowercase, and numbers. But you can override this. But if you don't need something super secure, which is already secure, you can just choose no and edit it later. Okay. And here we can also choose like several additional user information that we might want to retrieve from the user when the user logs in, right? So I'm just going to leave it on email at the moment to not make it that long. And if we want to, we can also specify the refresh token policy, how long the tokens are going to last and stuff like that. So for example, the refresh token can be 30 days. Here we can also choose which attributes of the app the user can read and write. At the moment, I'm going to choose no because we don't have any other services. Here we can enable different possibilities for the user, like login with a reCAPTCHA challenge, email verification with a redirect link, add a user to a group, or the email domain filtering, which is useful as well if we don't want the users from certain domains to log in. What else do we have? Like a custom out challenge flow, or override ID token claims, which are kind of useful if we want the user to have, I don't know, another role or stuff like that. So as you can see, it has a lot of possibilities to set up the authentication. So I'm going to leave this one with no other possibilities because we don't need it right now. But what we do want is an outflow flow, which is the one that is going to help us to log in the users to our plugin. Okay, so this one I'm going to choose yes. And I need to provide a domain for the for Cognito to create the UI and the link that the users are going to receive for the login. So for example, here I can add like ADC talk live, see if it works. Yeah, it looks like it does. Enter your redirect URI. This one is pretty important because let me write it, HTTP. Okay, localhost for the moment. Okay, so what is this one about? It's about when a user logs in through the UI, it actually has to be redirected to your application. So in order to see what is going on, or even to get the code of the authorization or whatever. So you can, you need to add the redirect and the when the user logs in and when the user signs out. So I'm going to add the same here. Localhost, okay. And that's it. Cool. This is also pretty cool because it restricts the URL that the user is going to be redirected in. Even if someone tries to use the UI or try to use the API to get that, for example, someone to try to redirect someone to a different URL, Cognito is going to restrict that and is not going to let someone redirect the authenticated user to a different site that is not the one that you specified here, right? Oh, looks like here. Here I have to check the sign out. Let me see if I just can copy paste this one here. So this empty space, and we go it. No, okay. here is where we want to get an authorization code grant in order to log in the user with the plugin. Okay, I don't need, this is the information that Cognito is going to pass when the user logs in. So I don't think I need a phone. I actually need the email, the OpenID, which is the authorization codes that we are going to receive, the profile, and the user information that is going to be received here. Okay, here you can set up like login with Facebook, Google, Amazon, and stuff like that, but I don't think that we need that for the moment. And here we can set up triggers for Cognito. The triggers that I told you about before can be set up here. So what is going to happen? If a user signs in, I can set up a trigger, like for example, a user signed in, send an email to the user saying thank you. Or I can say, when the user signs in, create a log to my analytics report in order to tell me how many users have been logged into my plugin. So this is a really powerful tool that we can use for our applications. Okay, I'm going to choose no for the moment, and we should be good to go now. Okay. What else? Besides that, I think this is the most important part of the application. And after that, we actually can authenticate the user. If we check here, let's see if the Cognito pool was already created. Let me, here we are, okay, here we have it. So let's check this one. This is basically how a pool looks. And this is where we can actually configure everything that we actually have. Right now here, we don't have the one that we created at the moment because we have to push it. It might take a little bit, so I'm not going to do it. But the one that I created previously is this one. So if we go here to App Client Settings, this is what the auth configuration that we created looks like. So I added here my callback URL, which is the one that redirects the user. Here I also added the sign out URL and everything exactly the same as we did. So immediately, if I click here to launch the hosted UI, I can see that I already have the way to authenticate the user, to create it. If the user wants to sign up, I can also edit this, and that should be pretty much it. So what happens if I try to log in? Let's check. So I'm going to log in with this one. If I sign in, it is going to send me to the URL that I predefined it here, which is this one, right? And here I can grab the authorization code that Cognito gave me to show the user how he can log in, right? So if the user copy this and goes to the plugin, let's try it here. Here is the plugin that we're going to check how it is built later. The user goes here, basically has to start here. It's going to say that here to sign in, right? And you just have to copy paste here the code and log in. And this is going to return the user everything that OpenID returns. So which is the ID token, the authorization token, and the refresh token, right? Let me show you here in the Postman to make it easier. Here is also something super interesting about this. If I try to paste the code that we used before and send it, it is actually going to send me an invalid grant. So that logic is already programmed, and you basically already have like the expiration of the code set up, and everything works pretty neat. And It's just a matter of deciding how you want the authentication to work, and it's done. So let's send a new code that is valid. And here you can see we have the ID token, the access token, and the refresh token. So which is everything we need in order to get the user information. For example, if we use the access token here, this endpoint is going to get me the user information, right? So if I add my JOT here, it is going to retrieve my information. So my username, I added basically the same as the email. For some reason, I didn't add something cooler. But yeah, you have everything you need here. And the ID token is actually the one that helps you identify the user. This one is for authorization purposes, but the ID token is the one that helps us to know who is the user that is using our application. Okay. So finally, to check how we can use the authentication, we actually need to create a backend, right? So let's configure that. Basically, we have to do like amplified as API. And this is going to start doing exactly the same process with the authentication. So we can choose if we want a GraphQL API, we can choose if we want a REST API, and it's going to start asking, what are we building? So here I'm going to say the Amplify ADC Live. API ADC Live. Here is going to tell me or asks me what is the endpoint that I want to build. So here I can add settings, I can add I don't know, XML, I can add users, I can add whatever I want. So for the moment, we want to build a settings library, so we are going to build a settings CRUD. Okay, provide a function for the name. The function is the one is where the logic is going to live at. So ADC Live function. Here you can choose if you want to program in different languages. It actually has a lot of possibilities, but right now it shows like .NET, Go, Java, Node.js, or Python. I'm going to choose Node.js because I really like to program TypeScript and JavaScript, so that works for me. Here we have some templates that AWS provides. So you can choose, for example, as our CRUD, which is the one that we need to work with the Dynamo function. What is Dynamo? Dynamo is basically the database. So is where we are going to be storing all the information that the user needs. So this function connects to Dynamo and stores or uses the data. Okay. You can also create a GraphQL authorizer, a hello world, just to give it something clean. A Lambda trigger, which is the one that I was talking about later. Here you provide, you can choose the template to program a Lambda trigger, and this one is the one that is going to send the email, for example. Or you can build something bigger, like a serverless express that is going to have several things. But as I said before, this one is the one that we need right now in order to use DynamoDB. We don't have a table at the moment, so it actually lets you create the table here too, and you can start providing the table name. So let's say ADC Live table. Okay, provide that. Oh yeah, that should be the same one. That is just fine. And here we can start adding the columns that we need. This one is really cool because it actually creates it even creates the conditions or the type parameters in order to prevent someone to send in data that is not the one that we defined here. So we can provide here the settings like the let's say, for example, ID, which is basic. Then we can go ahead and add another column. For example, we are going to add the user, which can be a string. We can also add the XML data. For example, say oh yes, I do want another column, XML, string, or we want to say who we shared, the list of shared people of that setting. So this one can be a list. We can also add, for example, to check if the setting is public, and anything you want. That is basically the concept. Here you can choose the partition key, which is going to be like the primary key. I'm going to choose ID, and a sort key, which is the one that helps us search through the table. So I'm going to add a user, and you can add global secondary keys for your table. Like, for example, I want to search not only by user, but also by all the public settings. So you can start molding your table here. So just going to leave it as no here at the moment. Also, the trigger here are awesome, because let's say that the user saved something to the table, and you can actually feed your information with that. So you can create analytics. You can also send an email to the user, a Discord message, or anything that you can think of can be triggered here. Okay. Any advanced settings, like, for example, resource permissions, anything like that, you can really go really advanced here. But say no for the moment, for the sake of time, then we can edit the function now. I'm going to say no, because we are going to check the one that I already have built. And here we can restrict the API access, which is awesome, because here we can actually authenticate the users, or let them be provide the permissions for the authenticated users or for the guest users, right? Do I want to add another path? No, I don't want to. So yeah, basically doing this, you already have your backend built as is with the template. So let's check what happened here. In the source, here we have the Amplify. We also have the AWS exports, which is the one that saves all that information. If we go to the backend, we can see that we have the authentication built here. Also, we have all the CLI inputs, which is what we have chose. So whatever we do here, we can save this or use this, push this to our repositories, and we can move this from project to project with no problem. Okay, here we're going to have our Lambda function. This is the function that is going to have all the logic that we want. So for example, here, as we chose the CRUD template, we can get the information, all the settings, only one setting. We can update a setting, we can post a setting, and everything that is needed for that, right? So yeah, what we did in order to connect to our plugin is exactly that. First, build our backend, and then in our plugin here in the Xcode, you're going to check that we had basically we used this request library, which is really useful, because once you have the tokens with authentication, you can start making whatever requests you want when the user is finally authenticated. You just send the barrier, the token here, and yeah, you can use it. Another possibility to use it here is in order to using the AWS SDK, which signs the requests, and is also even easier, or I don't know if more secure. Probably it is, but you might have to set up the SWK SDK here. Okay, so here, for example, if I want to get the user info request, I get the token here and make the request. If I want to exchange the authorization code for the tokens, which is the one that we saw first, let me run this to show it again. Let's give it a sec for it to start. Okay. Cool. Oh yeah, as we already logged in, it basically gets the XML data or a tree that I created in order to verify here if the user is logged in, right? If the file has the access tokens, then we can go ahead and let the user see the functionalities. So, for example, let's say that the user wants to load. I don't know. Here we have a load inverted setting here. So we load the configuration, and we are going to make the request to the backend, and the backend is going to respond the XML data that we saved here. If I want to save a new setting, it's going to happen exactly the same. For example, let's save this one. This one I want it to be public, and for example, let's say like a middle loud. Middle loud, the description is going to be middle loud configuration. Here I want to save, and we make the request with a post, right? And that is it. So if someone wants to use it somewhere else, for example, I go here to the live that is opened here, it's not going to show here, but if I refresh, it's going to retrieve the new one that we have here, and we can load it, which is awesome. And also something really cool is that since we are using the serverless backend, we can actually use it in wherever we want. So what I did is to create like a small React application that uses that backend and the Cognito configuration to load, for example, here, and go ahead. If I go to my settings, I am going to be able to see all of the settings that I have here. So here is my low setting. This is the gain. This is what is happening. Right now, I just have like the gain and the inverted face settings or parameters in the plugin. But you can set whatever you want, because what it saves is like the XML data of the tree, and it's pretty simple and useful to use. So also here, if we have like a private setting and we want to share it to someone else, we just go ahead and add like the email of the user that we want to share to. Go ahead and share, and that's it. It was shared. Probably here we can set up a trigger to send an email to the user that was shared to. Okay, and yeah, to show you how more or less this one is built, I have it here. So here is the tree. This was sort of my first experience creating an audio plugin. So yeah, I used it basically the documentation from Juice, and here we have an audio tree. An audio processor value tree state. So what it does is just to get the gain as a parameter and the inverted face, and that's it. And if I want to save the settings, what I do is to get that value tree state into an XML and save that here. So here is when I create my payload to send it to the backend, which is pretty simple and useful. And you can see is also really easy to set up. Finally, I guess that's something that I would like to share, is that you know that this backend code that we have here, like these applications, the CRUDs, they are really simple. We can write them with different logic, and probably check here if the user is authenticated or not. But it can also be a little bit insecure, because someone can hit our Lambda function for some reason if we didn't have set up a gateway, right? So if we didn't have like a gateway, if we make a normal request to a node backend that we ended up publishing somewhere, someone can actually hit it and probably start creating settings and adding read information into our databases. So what we have here is what AWS have as a as an additional security layer is called Amplify Gateway. So let me show you a little bit about this. Sorry, it's API Gateway. So what this does is to work like a bottleneck, right? So only the things that have been exclusively authenticated the way that we define here are the ones that are going to pass to our services. There is no way that someone can hit our Lambda functions, our Dynamo database, I don't know, our cloud analytics without going through the API gateway first, right? So here we have, for example, it shows the settings endpoint, which is the one that we created. And here we can authorize only the Cognito user pools, which is the one that we created to be authorized. We doesn't even need an API key or anything else because it is already handling the request with the user pool. So that gives us an extra secure layer of for securing our applications. Okay, so yeah, I guess that is it for my presentation. I hope that you sort of I sort of explained it well how I combined the serverless functions with the plugin. I believe that the most important part here is the fact that we have the possibility to authenticate the user and use it in a secure way. Besides that, I believe that I can show some extra possibilities that I have think of. For example, the first one is that we can create a WebSocket connection to live share the plugin configurations. So for example, if I create a WebSocket that receives when the user is actually moving the settings, like I don't know, increasing the volume, increasing the reverb, stuff like that, we can create a live share. So a producer is in one studio, another producer is in the studio in the other side of the world, and they can have the same audio file and share the configurations to check how it sounds for them, which can be really useful. You can also upload files directly from to a bucket, because AWS also have like this S3 bucket where you can place files and it can be verified with the same authentication that we created now. You can use the SDK directly to sign in requests. As I told you before, we can also have real-time analytics of the plugin use. So here we can say what is the most used setting for the users, which user has the most settings, or how many users do I have, any kind of analytics or reports that you want to have about the usage of your plugin. And yeah, finally creating triggers of any kind, anything that you can think of is, I think that is one of the most useful things of serverless. And yeah, thank you for being here. That was it. And let me know if you have any questions. I am happy to help. Thanks again.